Welcome everyone. Don't you dare be sour. This is 3 Count Commentaries, and we are going to be talking about the top 15 greatest black professional wrestlers of all time as compiled by Black Entertainment Television. Yes, BET. Even though BET is now owned by Paramount Global, CBS, it is still Black Entertainment Television. And now they're tapping into the wrestling culture, making everybody mad with this ridiculous list. So now I got to talk about it. It's an absolute must. It is written by some guy named Tyler Tynes, who is not a wrestling historian by any stretch of the imagination. It was posted March the 11th at 8:30 in the morning. It reads like you had to file this in by 8:45 or 9 o'clock, or you was going to fail the class. That's kind of how it reads. Now, we're going to get into this. I'm going to try to take this seriously, even though it's not serious at all. It did engender a lot of negative attention. A lot of people was mad because it's called the top 15 greatest black wrestlers ever, and not the 15 greatest black wrestlers of the last 40 years. Or something like that, or WWE's top 15 greatest black wrestlers ever. It's the 15 greatest black wrestlers ever. And there's nobody on this list from 1977. There's nobody on this list from from before 1980. So how about that? So let's get into this, okay? So there is no criteria listed. There is no asterisks. There is no admission from the author that he's like 29 years old and he's been watching wrestling for several years, a couple of decades. And, this is just all the people he's seen on television. There's nothing like that in here to make you calm down. It is wholly given to you as if all things were considered, which we know they weren't. So let's talk about this here opening statement. From Junkyard Dog body slamming the 450-pound King Kong Bundy with shocking ease, to The Rock defeating Mankind at Survivor Series 1998 to become the first ever black WWE champion, black wrestlers have been revolutionizing the sport for the better part of a century. This countdown spotlights 15 black superstars who didn't just compete, they redefined wrestling. Despite any number of cringe to flat-out racist moments in wrestling's long history, we've come a long way from Bearcat Wright and Bobo Brazil fighting for pro wrestling's desegregation. From the world's strongest man to the New Day to Bianca Belair, making history as the longest reigning black singles champion in WWE history. These 15 superstars overcame the industry's creative handcuffs to build legacies that transcended sports entertainment. Again, there was not one asterisk given. There was nothing to suggest that this might be in some way to try to mitigate the onslaught that this list caused. He just gives it to you raw, Busta Rhymes style. I appreciate that. I appreciate how ridiculous this list is. I got to tell you. Let's get into this thing. 15. We're not going to read every word of it. Just going to give you the list. Number 15, Jazz. So we're already off to a roaring start. Jazz. We're going to get Jazz here. They have listed as her best match a match with Trish Stratus for the WWE Championship with the women's title, Raw 2002. Don't remember it. Don't remember it at all. It says she joined a wrestling school in her home, Louisiana, and never looked back, being trained by WWE great Junkyard Dog in the process. In her short career, Jazz went on to become a 2-time WWE champ and was one of the only black female faces around the WWE in the early aughts. That's fair, but Jazz? It only gets worse from here. Let me tell you, it only gets worse from here, all right? Number 14, Shelton Benjamin. Okay, Shelton Benjamin. They have as his best match Chris Jericho versus Shelton Benjamin. Was this the Backlash match they had? I think his best match clearly was the Gold Rush tournament against Shawn Michaels, right? He also had a great match with Triple H. He had some pretty good matches with Carlito and, Johnny Nitro and those guys. But I'm not going to quibble too much about that. Let's talk about this as Shelton Benjamin, one of the early black wrestlers at the turn of the century that came from a similar skill set, superhuman athleticism that made your eyes drop, and a sporting background that shifted from college and pro football to pristine folk-style wrestling. All right. Okie dokie. Number 13, Naomi. Now, let's stop 1 second. Just stop right here. Let's say you was going to make a list this stupid, right? A list this brain rotted. Why would you put Naomi over Shelton Benjamin? Why would you do that? Unless you were trying to piss everybody off. This should have tipped your hand that he was making a troll list. Because this trolled the hell out of me when I first read it. Naomi, number 13. It says, the Funkadactyls were valets alongside Brodus Clay in an attempt to get Naomi more airtime on her Raw debut. She cashed in on that potential, even after some gruesome injuries early on. Now she's one of the most popular women on the roster. Well, okay. They have as her best match the SmackDown Women's Championship match at WrestleMania 33, which is a 6-pack challenge. I do not remember any other Naomi matches. I cannot say for sure if that was her best match or not. Sorry. Number 12, Jacqueline. Miss Jackie. She's been around for a really, really long time. It says, for a lot of people watching wrestling who've always been upset with how promotions treat black women, Jacqueline became the gold standard for professionals and viewers in terms of what it takes to make it in the big leagues. She was the first black woman to win a WWE championship of any kind. It was one of the toughest acts of the Attitude Era. They have as her best match a cruiserweight title match against Chavo Guerrero, which doesn't feel like that would have been her best match, but I can't remember any Jacqueline matches, man. This is the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression. I don't remember none of that stuff. And I do remember seeing her do some stuff in other places, but none of it sticks to my ribs, so whatever. But Jacqueline, I guess you could put her on the list. If under a normal circumstance, would Jacqueline make the list? You'd be pushing it, I think. Number 11, Big E. It says Big E was bad on the mic. By himself, he was a sleeper. But as part of the New Day, he became a top draw for both his in-ring stunts, and his out-of-the-ring appearances. Number 11. Look, Big E, he's fine and all, but better than Shelton Benjamin? No. No. Sorry. No, thank you. They have as his best match, him cashing in the Money in the Bank on Bobby Lashley. Let me tell you this. No. He had some really good matches with Apollo Crews. I'm talking about Big E. Oh, wait. Yeah, they had this match with... that wasn't even the best match him and Bobby Lashley had. I think they had a better match after that. When I think maybe even the very next week when Big E won the title straight up. Number 10. My goodness. Oh, it's Devon Dudley. Now, this just feels like he found 15 black wrestlers. He just Googled 15 black people, put their names in a tumbler, and just pulled them out one at a time in whatever order. Because there's no way you came to the understanding, to the belief that Devon Dudley is a top 10 black wrestler ever. There's no way you came to that conclusion. There's not even a drug you could take that would make your brain come to this conclusion. Top 10? Devon Dudley? Look, okay. I don't want to diss Devon, but get real. This can't not. No. Devon is not a top 10 black talent ever. No. All right. It has his best match, the TLC from SummerSlam 2000. Well, it says, though he was never a world champ, Devon Dudley was arguably the greatest black tag team champion wrestling has ever produced. Probably not. I don't even think that's true. I'm not even sure that's true. Number 9, Bianca Belair. It says, Bianca Belair is a legitimate star. No longer are black women pigeonholed into being just eye candy or secondary performers to men in the ring. And Belair has cashed in on that more than anyone of her era. Bianca is, number 9. That's kind of insane. That's a lot. I love me some Bianca Belair. Everybody knows that. I'm very biased. But in a meaningful list, I don't come up with Bianca being top 10. But I love me some Bianca Belair, so I'm not going to complain too much about her being there. Number 8, the almighty Bobby Lashley. Oh, wait 1 second. They have Bianca's best match being her WrestleMania 38 contest with Becky Lynch. I liked her match with Sasha Banks, even though I did like that match too. But I liked her match with Sasha Banks. I thought that was pretty good. Her match with EO, I think it was 2024, was insane. It was a great match. She's got quite a few really good matches, but I don't know how they're coming up with the criteria for what their best match is. Like I said, number 8, the almighty Bobby Lashley. This is one of the greatest athletic specimens ever recruited to the squared circle. It took him less than 18 months after debuting in the WWE to get a strap. He was a main player in the WWE diet at the end of the aughts, shaving Mr. McMahon's head with Donald Trump, going blow for blow with John Cena in main events. They have as Bobby Lashley's best match, his triple threat match versus Big E and Roman Reigns. This happened? I can't. This match occurred? Big E, Roman Reigns, and Bobby Lashley on an episode of Raw in 2021? Roman Reigns wrestling on Raw during the pandemic? Well, that might have been right after the pandemic then, huh? Oh my goodness. I don't remember this at all. I don't think that was Bobby Lashley's best match. I don't believe that at all. And I'm looking at Bobby Lashley's accolades, and they left off some of his TNA accolades, if I remember correct. I know they got him as Impact World Champion, but they look like they just read that off of Wikipedia. Like nobody calls it Impact Wrestling. It's TNA. And I think he won all the belts in TNA, and they don't have all the belts listed. Number 7, Ron Simmons / Farouk. Enough's enough. All right. I love Ron Simmons. I really do. I love Lashley, but enough's enough though. Let's just be honest. They have as Farouk's best match, a match with Ahmed Johnson. Come on, bro. Nobody has had their best match with Ahmed Johnson. Nobody. You got to completely ignore all the stuff he did in Doom. You got to ignore all the stuff he did. Well, I guess he wasn't a singles wrestler in Doom. But you have to, the stuff he did with Lex Luger. I mean, the match he won the title in wasn't that great, but it wasn't that bad either. Okay. Let's just get through this. Ron Simmons was the first black man to win a WCW championship. He was an icon, a legend from the early 90s, and one of the last waves of football talent that can make a real impact in pro wrestling. He always reminded me a lot of Jim Brown, Ron Simmons, but he's a little bit more of a go along to get along kind of guy. Not as active as Jim Brown, but very Jim Brownish to me. Number 6, the Junkyard Dog. All right. They got his best match, the Wrestling Classic versus Macho Man Randy Savage, the tournament final. This would have been in 1986, 1987 or something. No. he had much better matches in Mid-South with guys like Butch Reed and Ted DiBiase. No. He was washed by this point in time. By mid-'80s, he was washed. Drugs and everything that pretty much worn Junkyard Dog down. It was hardly not. If you really want to see the Junkyard Dog, please don't watch WWF Junkyard Dog. He's a cartoon character on that show. Just being honest. Okay. There is no black wrestling history in a lot of ways without Big Daddy Ritter from Wadesboro, North Carolina. The Junkyard Dog was the face of black wrestling in the 80s, a time period that wasn't the kindest to us or our talent in the ring. That can be said for every time before the 80s, which is why this list looks the way that it does. And that's one thing that you need to really take into consideration. If you feel like you're getting your feelings hurt by this stupid list, take into account that a lot of promoters didn't really feature black talent, or they didn't feature black talent that often. They were treated almost like women, where they would come in, pop the territory for a little bit, and then be gone. You know, the idea that there was a current and continuous stream of black talent that was on top, that was very, very rare. So there's not a lot of footage for a lot of these guys. You know, the guys that people would, you know, more or less yell at him about, like Bobo Brazil and Bearcat Wright or Big Cat Ernie Ladd or Sweet Daddy Siki. You know, you asking people to really go hunt for some footage. And then for some of these guys, you're really going to be good luck trying to find some footage. So I get why the list looks the way it does, because he's looking at it from the perspective of these are the black people you would know if you watched wrestling recently, and these are the best of the people that you would know. But he should have said that, you know. He should have just said this is for our time, or the greatest black wrestlers of the last 40 years. It still wouldn't be put this way. It still wouldn't be framed, and you still wouldn't have Shelton Benjamin at 14 and Jacqueline at 12. You still wouldn't have that. But it would make more sense if you put like just an asterisk or two, you know, in order to explain why Junkyard Dog is on here, but like Kamala isn't. Like, well, I'm spoiling it, but Abdullah the Butcher is not on here, despite the fact that Abdullah the Butcher, you know, is incredibly famous and, you know, sold tickets all over the globe for decades. There's a reason he's not on this list, and he never really worked in the WWF. And he was in WCW for a short time, but he wasn't in there for a long time. So let's move on. Sasha Banks, number 5. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sasha Banks, he put slash Mercedes Moné. Despite the fact that he put that slash there, all the Sasha Banks fans have been having a conniption that he dare even mention the name Sasha Banks, which is how everybody knows her and is responsible for all of her success, if we're being honest. They have as her best match the Raw Women's title match from July 2016. I think this is if I remember correctly, the Falls Count Anywhere joint they had, which actually might be one of her best matches. It might not be the best, but it's certainly one of them. It says, the boss Sasha Banks is the face of black female wrestling worldwide, the face of the revolution for the women's side of the game. The face of black female wrestling worldwide. I'm going to accept this. I'm going to accept that. I don't think that there's any other female black wrestler that's more famous right now than Sasha Banks. So I'm not going to say that. Bianca Belair and Naomi, I don't think are as famous as Sasha. So I'll give them that. I think if booked correctly, Bianca will become more famous than Sasha Banks. But as of right now, Sasha Banks, I think, is the most famous black female wrestler in the world. Number 4, Mark Henry, Sexual Chocolate. It's sexual, baby. They have as his best match His World Heavyweight title win versus Randy Orton, Night of Champions 2011. I don't know what Mark Henry's best match is, man. I can tell you, I spent over a decade not paying attention to Mark Henry matches. I've made it my life's work to not really care about Mark Henry matches. And I don't even dislike Mark Henry. I love the Hall of Pain. But that was 20 years into his career. Well, nearly 20 years into his career, like 12, 13 years in. He got signed in 1995. You know, he didn't really start getting any kind of momentum until 2010. That's what, 15 years in? Jesus Christ. A little bit of his bio says, famously billed as the world's strongest man, there was a lot of hype for Mark Henry's emergence in WWE. When he came to the WWE in 1996, he was supposed to be the face of change in the organization. He was an Olympian, and with him brought more eyes on the promotion. It took more than 15 years before Henry would clobber Randy Orton. Okay. Number 3. Oh boy. We're just nut-cutting time now, isn't it? Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston is number 3. I think we really underestimate how much niggas love Kofi Kingston. I'm starting to think we are underestimating it. We are underestimating the degree to which niggas love Kofi Kingston. They have his best match, the Daniel Bryan WrestleMania 35 match, which was easy peasy. He really had some good matches as an undercard guy too. But in terms of the main event matches, yeah, that was his best match. It says, when Kingston debuted in 2006, the assumption was that the sky was the limit. Just like many superstar black acts on this list, he was brimming with confidence and had early wins and mid-level title fights to back his rise. It was hard to think of anything but WWE gold being in Kingston's future by the end of the aughts, with big wins over Chris Jericho and run-ins with Randy Orton. Let's not talk about that Randy Orton situation, because that really derailed his career. But Kofi Kingston spent an inordinate amount of his time in WWE as a champion. And that is one thing that I do want to give Kofi for. He has been a champion for most of his WWE run. Somebody should do like the math on that. Like, he's been in WWE since 2005 or 6 or something like that, almost 20 years. He has been either U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion, or tag team champion for most of that time. I think he was, you know, kind of he was a mid-carder. You know, like, that's pretty much what it was. But I don't think it went, like, long stretches of time with Kofi just being a loser. You know, he almost always won something. So that's something to be, you know, to hang your hat on. Is he the third best black wrestler ever? Fuck no. But then again, we're already off the rails here. So what difference do it make? Like, we already in the weeds. We just going deeper and deeper. And now, not only are we in the weeds, man, we're in the pond. We're near where the gators roam at this point, because number 2, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yes, sir. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is number 2. Oh, this is a hell of a rib. This is a great rib. In terms of icon status, there's an argument to be made that no one who stepped in the ring under the WWE banner has done more for the company than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Then why is he number 2? Why is he number 2? The Rock is wrestling. He's on magazine covers, the star of action movies, and has made plenty of returns to stimulate wrestling fans of any generation. So why is he number 2? How do you justify The Rock being number 2? That's insane. All right? It's insane. They have The Rock's best match, WrestleMania 17 versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't think that's The Rock's best match. I honestly don't. I don't think Steve Austin had The Rock's best match. I do think that of the trilogy, maybe 15 is the best match. I like 15 better, personally. In terms of Rock matches, I think he had a really good 2 out of 3 falls match, or what that was, with Triple H. I think he had some really good matches with like Mick Foley. I think he had some good matches with Kurt Angle. You know, like, I think The Rock really had some decent matches out there. But saying WrestleMania 17, that's probably his most famous match. You know, that's probably one of the highest profile matches he had, next to Hogan. And I would say Hogan's one of his best matches too. WrestleMania 18. Number 1, Booker T.O. Huffman. Uncle Book. The 5-time Booker T. The greatest black professional wrestler ever. And he has his best match versus The Rock at SummerSlam 2001. That is untrue. I didn't even like that match. I liked the matches Booker T had with Chris Benoit in WCW. I liked the match. I think he had a really good match with Sting in WCW, if I remember correctly. I think it was on Nitro or something. I liked his match with Rey Mysterio. I thought those were pretty good. Booker T is phenomenal. Look, as much as people are all up this guy's ass about this list, and they're rolling their eyes at the idea of Booker T being the greatest black professional wrestler of all time, look, I love Booker T. And there is an inherent coolness about Booker T, and he almost never gets this kind of respect. So I'm going to give it a pass. I mean, look, I already said the thing is already off the rails, all right? We already screwed this thing up. It's already fucked up. Having Booker T get the nod to be the greatest black professional wrestler ever because BET said so, I'm going to run with it. Okay, he's the greatest black professional wrestler of all time. Because one thing that I don't really want people to do is to diss Booker T. Like, he ain't never did nothing. Like, man, that guy worked way too hard. You know, like, he's legit on the list. In terms of black professional wrestling stars, Booker T deserves to be on the list. He's on the list somewhere. Should he be number 1? But we ain't making a real list. That's the thing. We ain't making a real list. Whatever this is, this was homework that somebody threw together at the last minute. So here's part of the bio. It says, in a lot of ways, Booker T has achieved more than any other black wrestler to ever lace up the boots. A double Hall of Fame inductee, both as a singles act and as a tag team duo. A world champion and a valuable asset to the company who didn't know they needed him so much when they took the dip in 2006. How many popular wrestlers you know to run for mayor of Houston? He didn't win, though. He didn't win. He didn't win. Oh, my God, he didn't win. If he'd have won, I would definitely say he's number 1. He's the greatest worker of all time. He won. All right. So Dave Meltzer had a big attitude about this. He says, I hate these lists, but Dwayne is so far ahead at number 1 that it makes the list ridiculous from the start. Plus, no Bobo Brazil, Abdullah the Butcher, and Bearcat Wright, let alone Rocky Johnson, Ernie Ladd, or Dory Dixon. There's a lot of people who are upset that there was no Swerve, there was no Athena. You know who those fans are. They want to be a part of everything. But there was also, people who are hardcore wrestling fans who are saying, like, you didn't have Aja Kong, you didn't have Awesome Kong, you didn't have Jay Lethal, who was a superstar down in Ring of Honor, even though that company was run out of a broom closet. Like, there's a lot of black talent, okay? If you ask me, from a guy who knows pro wrestling history to a degree, not enough to like write a book or anything, from all the books that I read, who is the greatest black professional wrestler of all time? Easily, number 1 is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Number 2 is probably Bobo Brazil. Bobo Brazil was the top black professional wrestler of the 50s and 60s, right? He was a guy who would go into a territory, work on top, and then leave. Again, a lot of this, the people don't know about Ernie Ladd being a main event guy in the South and on the East Coast. It's because there's not a lot of footage out there. Even WWE doesn't post up a lot of footage of like Ernie Ladd in Madison Square Garden, right? So I don't expect people to know this stuff. But Ernie Ladd should be on the list. You know, Bearcat Wright, I haven't even seen any footage of him. There's also the original Black Panther, Jim Mitchell. He's almost never talked about, never discussed. Butch Reed is, I know he kind of screwed up a lot of his career in the later years. He was supposed to be the first Black Intercontinental Champion, was Butch Reed, and then he kind of screwed that up. So there's a lot of guys that could be featured, and then there's people who are talking about why you ain't talking about Alicia Fox. Get fucked, okay? Nobody wants to sit here and talk about Alicia Fox. All right. But there's so much Black history that this is an attempt, to get people talking about Black professional wrestlers. And yes, there was Kamala. Kamala was also a huge draw, despite the fact that all of these people hate the gimmick. Kamala was a draw everywhere he went. And that's the purpose of this game, is to be a star. He was a star. Abdullah the Butcher was a star. Right? The best in-ring talent? No. A lot of Black wrestlers, Abdullah the Butcher was treated like a monster, similar to like a Bruiser Brody. And Bobo Brazil was treated like a traveling act. He never really, I know he was a big star here in Detroit. Him and the Sheik would main event, down in Cobo Arena all the time. And they were friends. And you're talking about a guy who of Arab descent and a guy who was Black main eventing in a still somewhat segregated city during the 50s and 60s. That's money. That's history, right? That's stuff that we could be talking about, but we're just mad that, Booker T is number 1 and The Rock is number 2 and fucking Jazz is on the list at all. Like, ultimately, yes, it's okay to laugh at how ridiculous and stupid this list is, but then take into account why it's ridiculous and stupid. It's ridiculous and stupid for the same reason that if you go find a 25-year-old and he says the top 15 basketball players of all time, and it's like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and then a bunch of other people, and you're like, wait a second, where's Dr. J? Where's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? He didn't watch none of that shit, so he don't know anything about that. He might put them on the list just because they're supposed to be there, but he doesn't really watch that stuff. He didn't know nothing about those guys. And you know what? That's kind of how, when you do the top 15 greatest MCs of all time, and people who ain't never listened to a rap album before 1998, they just have, C Murder and shit on there. You're like, what the hell is this? What is this? But when you take into account that, region, age, accessibility of the art form, accessibility of the person's art, you get stuff like this. So yes, this list is ridiculous. It's stupid. But you take into account that the young man probably doesn't have access to all the information that everybody else has. He's probably not some kind of wrestling historian. He probably should have started with a different, maybe like a profile on a Black talent, and then started trying to build a list from there. But he threw a grenade, like he did a drive-by, just threw this bitch and just kept going. He didn't even come out to defend the thing. He just threw it and kept it moving. I gotta respect that kind of gumption. It's a hell of a rip. It's a hell of a rip. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you folks later.